Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Kevin. Apologies ahead of time if the slides screw up, but I sent this late and I don't think some of my fancy schmancy animations made it, but we'll blame Ashley and her vacation to Durban, South Africa. Don't know if you knew, but Durban, South Africa is the highest population of Indian people outside of India. Did you know that, Pindi? Oh, nice. Durban does sound like turban. So my talk is I have to manage people now. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about my struggles and learnings as I transitioned from a software developer into management. And even though my path was technical to people management, it really has a lot of overlap with people in different roles as you go from being an expert in a role to managing people that are an expert in a role. I like the Muppets, so deal with that. So this is me, that's Fozzie Bear. Basically, so I'm the CTO of Careteam Technologies. We do sort of patient-centered healthcare software, like a platform, so patients can actually have access to their health information, crazy thought. And it also helps integrate with hospital systems and deal with the transitions as you go from like clinic to clinic, especially people with comorbidities and like a lot of things like when you have heart disease, a lot of times like high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes and stuff go along with it. So that's what we do. I have a computer science degree from Simon Fraser University, and and I have over 20 years of industry experience, as Pindi mentioned, and that's being a software developer as well as manager. So how the heck did I get here? Here's a list. Ooh, some of the animations did work. So everything on the top row there, I was actually still a technical daily deliverer for software development. And then really my time at Vision Critical is when I transitioned from a team lead into a director of software development. And that's where I sort of figured out like, hey, managing people isn't like developing software. Shocking. And it was really weird because you go and get formal education and you actually have so much work experience, and then you get promoted out of ever being effective again, which is kind of crazy. So what's the problem in the high-tech industry? Well, there's lots of problems, there's lots of good things, but the way I see it is, I really can't read this. How did you do it, Cyrus? Where's Cyrus? You couldn't see it either? So, okay. I'll just turn around, turn my back to you guys. But really, one of the problems is that your technical education and your work experience really doesn't train you to be a manager of people, which is prevalent in a lot of industries. Another point is that companies, for some strange reason, tend to promote people that are really technically strong into being management. They have a single column career path, which is just ludicrous. Like, why would you do that? You're not only promoting somebody into a position they're inept at and they need to be trained at, but you're also losing one of your best technical deliverers. So I never understand why companies did that. Much prefer the Y path, where you get to a certain point, you can be a principal engineer, distinguished fellow, whatever you want to call it, or you can move on to the management side. And then the final point is, EQ and IQ, not the same thing. Intelligence is great, but it doesn't always correlate to someone that has emotional intelligence, which is really what you need to lead people. So let's talk about some of my struggles. So my very first one, when I was still a Vision Critical, is delegation is hard. It's really hard, especially when you're intimately familiar with the architecture. You would know how to solve that problem in half a day, and it's going to take someone a week. That's really tough to get someone else to do that. And but what I learned is that delegation, I have to let people make their own mistakes, make their own learnings, and I have to give them stuff that they can do so that I can do the things only I can do. They're not going to do budgets, they're not going to do hiring, they're not going to do mergers and acquisition type work. So delegation is something really, really hard to learn. Another one for me, a big one, is that job satisfaction is crazy different in management than it was when I was a software developer. Every day as a software developer, I would go in, there would be a problem, I'd figure out what the problem was, I'd solve it, I'd feel good about myself. When I was a manager for the first 6 months, I hated it because I didn't know how to measure, was I being effective or not? Because I'd talk to people, but you don't get that daily sort of satisfaction. But what I do find is that even though the time between my job satisfaction is longer, I find it much more like a bigger high when I put together a high-performing team, when I release a product that had 7 different teams across hardware, software, AI, and everything. That's really cool for me. Not everyone communicates the same way as me. This may sound obvious, but I'm a very direct communicator. If I screwed up, I want someone to tell me I screwed up. Sometimes when I'd tell people in my early days of management, hey, you screwed up, they'd curl into a little ball and cry in the corner, right? Not literally, but so you really have to understand how people communicate, what makes them tick. I'm a big fan of DISC, Myers-Briggs, soft, fluffy stuff like that. You still need to keep up with tech trends. So this is the same with any industry. You still need to keep up with the new standards and you know, where people can be a master at their trade. You can't skirt that. So I find myself saying, well, when I was a developer sometimes, and that's really bad, you need to actually keep up to date with some of the tech trends. And also managing people with a different background than you can be difficult. So for me, that was like people in hardware, people in UX. It was a little bit different, and I think the approach there is not to try to pretend you're a master of that, just to understand how to support them and learn from them, actually. So I got 8 learnings here that Kermit is going to help us talk about. So I think the first one here is you really need to train for your new job. It is a new job. Like, you have to treat it that way. There's a totally different skill set. You can utilize the previous skill set that got you into that role, but it's really about training. And there's all sorts of leadership courses you can take. Sauder School for Business has something. I personally took the leadership course at the Justice Institute of BC in New West. Really great program. There's lots of online resources. I'm a big fan of Drucker and Dan Pink, and so you can definitely learn stuff there. Soft skills are very important. So things like coaching, listening, facilitating, feedback. Like, think back to a bad boss that you had. They probably didn't have a lot of these good skills. So those are things that I've learned to invest in. Also, communication and relationships are pretty much everything. You can even tell me like a technical bug in a product, and I can trace that back to how that's a communication problem or how there was a failed relationship there. You need to invest in the relationships of the people that you're managing, your peers, the people that you report to, even like sales and marketing, things that are dotted line connections. You need to make sure you're maintaining those relationships. I find personally that purpose is more important in management. When I was a developer, I could find interesting technical challenges in any old product, but maybe it's just me getting older, but I definitely find that I need to feel like I'm making a difference in the world. And I was at before joining Careteam, I was at a very prestigious, one of the biggest companies in the world that every developer wants to work for. And I was there for a month, and I was like, well, I don't want to do this. So I actually left because I didn't have a purpose there, even though it felt like it was a career goal. So that was a big learning moment for me. Another one, don't tolerate brilliant jerks. I don't know why companies do it. There's a guy, he's extremely bright, he's toxic, he makes everyone's life a living hell. Why is he working for the company? Please don't do that if you're ever in that position to not make it happen. And also, I'd like to hire on the carpool principle. So think about a carpool. You have to share the same destination with people there. It's the same thing with building a team. You also have to be okay with stopping to go to the bathroom, or maybe they want to stop at a tulip festival. Like, you have to share the same interests. So, so I was stuck in tulip traffic a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, Abbotsford. Also, a good process is crucial. So a lot of people think like agile processes is just a pain in the ass, and like, why do I have to, change this in Jira or do that? But the way I see it is a good process is like a kid's bowling party. You ever go where they have the bumpers? And you can throw a ball, and you're not always going to get a strike, but you're definitely not going to throw a gutter ball. So that's what I kind of see processes that way, is just to make sure things don't fall through the cracks, right? You can't throw any gutter balls that way. Team charters and team working agreements, I find, are an amazing thing. So if you have a team that's forming, get together and figure out what you want to be known for, different roles, responsibilities, your values, how you want to communicate, what it means when my headphones are in. When do I respond to Slack messages? Like you can actually define that as a team, and then all your problems go away because it's written in this team charter, and if someone violates it, that's bad on them. And then finally, get in the mindset to, if something good happens with your team, it happened because of your team. If something bad happened because of your team, it's because of you. So that's the mindset that I'm in. I always want to give credit to people because they're the ones doing the work, but when something's screwed up, it's probably my fault because I didn't communicate that well, or I need to invest in that relationship a bit more. And then learning from failure is big. I think, if you're going to fail, try to fail fast, and make sure you're having root cause analysis meetings and getting to the core of the issue. So those are my learnings, and any questions?
Fantastic. Lots of analogies. Oh my God, the hands are waving. We'll start with Dave, work over to you. Give me a second.
That was great, and
Thanks,
it's
Dave.
great to meet you. I'm Dave Brown of Quick Healthcare.
Hi, Dave.
I'm curious, when it comes to you spending your time, how does it break out between managing people, managing tech, and managing partners in the sort of technology ecosystem you're in?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's not the same answer every day is like drinking from a fire hose sometimes. So I find that when I was at larger companies, it was a little more focused, and now that we're kind of a well-funded startup, we're over that hump, but we're still only 15 people, and when we close our next round, it's going to be a lot of hiring. But right now, there's a lot of exploratory partnerships that we're dealing with. So I'm always brought in on the technical side of that. I've got a really strong team of people right now, people that I can trust, but I'm still heavily involved in architecture because I'm a lot more, senior than a lot of the other people in the teams. So some days I'm almost 100% technical dealing with architecture stuff. I'm doing a lot of AI stuff right now, so a lot of named entity recognition, taking unstructured data, moving it into structured data. So I'm doing that because it's not core to our current platform, but I do want to work on it. Whereas I want to make sure I'm unblocking them from all the other technical stuff. So it's tough because we have a product that we need to deliver. We have clients and customers asking for things. I'm kind of being a product manager right now too because we have someone that's doing a lot of stuff in the adoption and integration side. But it's a good question. It's just sometimes it's 0% technical, sometimes it's 100%. And I find the smaller the company, the more hats you need to wear. Yeah.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
First is I'd like to know when is the moment make you make the decision you want to switch from tech to management?
That's a good question, and there's kind of two answers. So I think later in my time at Kodak, I really I was kind of an earlier adopter of Agile, or earlier for me, I think. Not a lot of other people were doing it, so I definitely saw working smarter, not harder, and I worked for a Japanese company, so I did a lot of the Kaizen, Kanban stuff when I was in Japan. And I sort of brought it over to Kodak and saw that it was better. So that's when I kind of got the seed planted. And it's funny because the actual decision, I got 10 minutes to decide if I wanted to be director of software at Vision Critical before a reorg meeting. So the CTO pulled me aside and said, Kevin, you want to be director of software? And I was like, oh, can I go home and talk to my wife about it? And he's like, no, you got 10 minutes. So I always had on my mind that I wanted to move into management when I was 40, and I was a bit before 40 then. But that's the exact time that I had 10 minutes to think about it. And he literally went away and came back 5 minutes later and said, okay, I got to put together this thing, so that was the time I decided that I wanted to be in management.
So you got the offer, actually. Then it's kind of related to my second question.
Mm-hmm.
My second question is, as your technical background, but you don't have enough or at all management experience.
Right.
How do you prove, or, my start point was from interview or whatever. How do you prove you do have the potential or you do have the managed skill to do the managed job?
Yeah, I don't think I was chosen because I didn't have that. I think people did see that in me, where I'd do a lot of mentoring of, I was a team lead still at the time, so I was doing a lot of mentoring of people. I would try to build high performing teams, but I also think I spent a lot of time playing sports, being captains of teams, coaching people. So I think there's other areas in my life, and as a father, grandfather of 2 grandkids right now. So yeah, thank you.
Wow.
I know. Yeah, I don't believe it either. And so I think there's other aspects in your life, and to me, I was always a bit of a reluctant leader because I am an introvert. I do recharge by myself, but a lot of times people wouldn't do things the way I saw them as being most efficient, so that would annoy me to the point where I'd take over and start doing things, and I think that just happened more and more as I got older and older. So pretty much my annoyance made me a manager, I guess.
Perfect. There's 2 more questions. I have one over here, and then we're going to finish off with you. I see you, girl. If you can pass this over.
Thanks. I've had the pleasure of working with Alex and Rob and consider them to be visionary in what they feel for Careteam. So as a technical person responsible for implementing those visions, how do you keep up?
I don't know if anyone knows Rob and Alex, but Alexandra Greenhill is our CEO, and she's a TED speaker, and she's a medical doctor, and she is just exhausting. They're such amazing visionaries, and they have so many ideas that I always feel like I'm Debbie Downer, where they're like, oh, we can do this and we can do that and AI here, and I always have to be well, that'll be 6 months and that'll be 8 months, and you can only sort of have one of them. So I think it's a bit of a yin and yang thing. I think to build a great team, and we, the carpool, methodology there totally works with us. Is I had so many amazing conversations with them, but at the same time, we each have our strengths and weaknesses, and we need to just play towards our superpowers. And I think, Alex has her superpowers in terms of like being a visionary, understanding the medical field. Rob is a really, serial entrepreneur that's got, a bunch of different exits in different companies. That's always thinking things that way. And then I'm the, kind of, I don't like seeing myself as a parent, but I'm the guy that says, no, you can't, have your dessert until you've eaten your corn and chicken or whatever the heck it is. But yeah, it's exciting and exhausting at the same time, but they're two of the most wonderful people that if I, started my own startup, I would take them along with me. So, good question.
Great question. And Alexandra spoke at Tech Vancouver a couple months ago. So if you want to check out her talk on YouTube, her YouTube channel, a little plug. Right over here, last question.
Hi, so you talked about the importance of purpose, especially as a manager, and I was wondering, how would you define your organization's collective purpose / inner why?
At Careteam right now?
Yeah, at Careteam.
Well, so for me, I have two elderly parents that are pretty much playing surgery bingo right now. They've had like just this whole gamut of surgeries, and they're out of this clinic into that clinic. And everyone, probably in this audience, has horror stories in the healthcare industry that has just let them down. And it's such an easy problem to solve. It's just integrate, stop being fragmented, share the information. Like you as a patient or a person, you have the most invested interest in your own health, yet you have no access to it. If you walked into your doctor and said, give me the file you have on me, they're going to be like, no, but it's your information. So we're working on defragmenting that. We're working on solving a problem that's globally across the globe. It's not like it's unique to Canada or the US. It's worse in some countries than others, but to a T, all countries suck at this. So we're working on like being a connector, integrating, this clinic to that clinic, secure messaging, everything's got to be HIPAA and PIPA and FIPIDA compliant. And it's a tough problem to solve. Healthcare industry is extremely slow moving, but I sort of see healthcare now like banking was, say, 20, 30 years ago, where it's like you didn't have, the whole ATM revolution. You'd have to go in and write checks, and it was really slow. And now you can just, I am an RBC banker, and you can just take a picture of your check and bam, it's there. So like the technical revolution hit the banking industry, and I think the growth market in healthcare right now is insane, and there's so many problems to solve, and I think we just need to work together and integrate to do it. So that's my purpose, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you, Kevin.